Lycanthropic Ancestor Bloom, a Datura trip report by Zafuru69, posted to Irwid.org, December 27th, 2006. I've always enjoyed the effects of meditation and breathing techniques. In college, I began to use yoga, visualization, and breath control methods to induce visions and out-of-body experiences. Over the last 3 years, I've begun to experiment with psychoactive plants in conjunction with the aforementioned methods. So far, my results have been excellent, and I would like to share my latest journey with you. On March the 13th, 2005, at 8 PM in New Orleans, I stepped out into the backyard and harvested 5 trumpet flowers and 3 large leaves off the tree. I rinsed them gently and placed them in 20 ounces of boiling water for 5 minutes with the cover on the pot. I allowed them to steep for 5 more and poured myself a cup of the spicy smelling brew, which was a lovely light green. Positioning myself in a comfortable chair with my back straight, I began to visualize green light flowing from the cup to my face and body. I then placed my headphones on and began to listen to Black Sabbath. I really get into a great trance state while grooving to Ozzy. Once I achieved the familiar sensation of my body expanding beyond itself, I drank the entire cup of tea. This was at 8:45 PM. In 10 minutes, I was very thirsty and unaware of the fact I was already having visions. This was the marked difference between my previous experiences with hallucinogenic substances. I am a lucid dreamer and have always been aware of when I am dreaming and have the ability to decide and control my actions, even when perception and sensation during the dream state is as real as in my waking life. This ability has carried over into my journeys with self-induced trance and psychotropics. This was not the case with the trumpet flower, however. I felt my self-induced trance not affected. 2 men walked into the room and asked if I knew how to play gin rummy. I answered no, but that I could learn quickly. They sat down and we commenced to play. It was not unusual for people I'd never met to just walk into this house, as we have a large and warm community in this area, and I assumed they were friends. I invited them down to the kitchen for food, and one of my pals that lived there was making toast. After I drank my second cup of tea, my house pal, who I'll just refer to as E, asked me who I was talking to. I then turned and pointed to the card player, number 1 and number 2, introducing them to E, and E said, "Dude, no one is there, what are you on?" I had a good laugh with the cardsman, and we 3 concluded that it was E whose vision was off. I sat on a stool at the counter and had a 3rd cup as the rest of E's housemates came in from a party they had been at. To my confusion, they all agreed with E. There was no one there. It was only then that I realised just how hard the Datura had hit me with alarming speed, passing right under my radar. My usual sharp awareness and self-control were nowhere to be seen, and I have never before exceeded my set dosage, which I had intended to be only 1 cup, and here I was, with the 3rd cup totally drained. When I looked back at E, I said, "Oh shit, I'm so stoned right now." As soon as I said the word stoned, the most intense body high I've ever felt hit me like a truck. I felt one with the wooden stool on which I sat. Very slowly, and with great effort, I stood up and walked to the stairs. I began to feel a heat upon my skin like the rays of the sun, and found myself transfixed by an alarming increase in all 5 senses, and had to be helped upstairs and set on the couch. As soon as my ass hit the cushion, everyone vanished, and I found myself alone in the house, which was now a cross between my home, E's home, and the set of Jumanji. Felt something tingle in my nose and smelt what I knew to be prey. No mental pause occurred between me sitting on a couch as a human and shifting into a large wolfen creature. The metamorphosis was smooth and painless, filled with great energy, and I soon began my hunt, and there I went. Up and down the halls, the stairs, and through the trees, I gave joyous chase to a cat. Poor house cat in retrospect. At some point, I had no grasp of time by now, my human pals once again materialised, and upon seeing them I determined to make it clear that the cat was my prey, and they were just oddly shaped competition. Asserting my dominance consisted of me nipping, headbutting, and corralling poor E and the others into a room. It was at that point I was back in the originally shaped house, as well as being human, but also 3 years old. all of this feeling totally natural to me at the time. I even began to play tag and eat the buttons off of my shirt. I eventually realised I had to pee, so I went to the bathroom and convinced myself that the tub was the toilet, commencing to whiz into the tub and onto the floor. Seeing as I was 3 years old, I couldn't figure out how to pull up my pants, and so I decided to go without them. Upon exiting the bathroom, I entered into a great dance hall filled with people dancing to blues and patting me affectionately on the head as I passed by. I ran into another room, and I was in a hospital lobby watching an excellent show about my family and its ancestral heritage and occult teachings. Then, I was an adult again, and aware of the odd fact that my ass was exposed to everyone, and bless their hearts, he and his housemates, I put some briefs on me and tried to quiet myself down. Right now, I felt like I'd smoked an entire ounce of marijuana and drank 4 pots of coffee on top. Accordingly, I began to recite all of the occult knowledge that I'd just been taught, while running as fast as possible all around the house, until I was sure that I'd memorized everything. During this whole process, I was relentlessly teased by the doors and walls of the house. They kept trying to mess up my memorization process. They'd jump in front of me, knock me in the head, and stick out the baseboard feet to trip me. Despite their efforts though, I succeeded in locating my notebook and pen, and in very loopy large print, inscribed my new teachings. These are actually an amazingly informative several chapters, and now I'm also very good at playing gin rummy, I must say. After several unmeasured moments of hilarity and ghost watching, I found myself lying on my back watching all of the ghosts I've been talking to slowly melt up into the ceiling. By the time this was occurring, it was early morning, and after several more mild visual hallucinations, like dancing fairies around the oat bran box, as well as folks from other states randomly appearing and vanishing, I started to feel sober, but still very hyperactive and lacking an appetite at all. I looked at E's watch to find that it was 9:35 AM. I'd been tripping for over 12 hours. Lingering effects that I noted were a difficulty focusing visually on near items and feeling absolutely no need for sleep. I guess you could say I'm all done. Shared hallucinations. A Datura trip report by Sean, posted to earwid.org, July 31st, 2004. I took this stuff along with 3 friends in Israel. It was by far the strangest event in all of our lives. We all saw the same hallucinations, if they were. But first off, I noticed we had speech impairment. Then the rules of reality would change. They all started getting wanderlust. As the girls got up to just walk, I would guide them back to our camp spot. The other guy was literally running around in a circle on the beach, making a yin-yang in the sand. And then he'd start crawling on his belly. I felt an overwhelming urge to sleep, but I was worried about the girls. I was a bit bored, so I started flipping a coin. And of course, the fucking coin disappeared in midair, and the 3 of us all saw it happen at eye level. I looked around where it could have possibly landed, but it was gone. So I repeated, and the same thing happened once again. The girls started applauding, thinking I was doing a magic trick. I just thought, oh shit, this is going to be one serious trip. I tried to smoke my cigarettes, but I couldn't get them to my mouth. I would try a couple times and they would disappear. The girls would once again clap, thinking I was doing a magic trick. I finally had to use my free arm as a sort of guide to get the cigarette to my mouth. Honestly, the best way I could describe it was as if my head wasn't even solid. So yeah, it was to be the most freakish night of our lives. I passed out for half an hour after, I think. When I woke up, all 3 of them were gone. I fought the urge to wander and stayed with our stuff. I couldn't even read my watch, I had blurred vision, and I couldn't even piss. Felt like a burning urinary tract infection. I was thirsty as hell, but forced myself to take sips from my canteen, which, like the cigarette, I had to guide to my mouth. Now, here is the really bizarre part. I saw these nature people everywhere, and they saw me. Some of them communicated with me without even speaking. Others just straight up scared the shit out of me. They were deformed like burnt people. I genuinely thought a mental hospital was allowing their deformed, freakish lunatics to wander the beach right before the sunrise, before the tourists and regular folks showed up. Of the two types of beings I encountered, I had the impression one was good and the other was malevolent. They could disappear instantly if you looked away. Throughout the night, I was visited physically in front of me by my friends. They all had various things to say, like, "Where are the keys to the room?" We didn't even have a room, and the conversations and inquiries were totally illogical. When I looked away, they would also disappear. In the morning, they came back, minus the guy. He came back that next evening. They all reported the same things. Normal people disappeared, and we were in a world of these nature things and people whose pastime was playing hide and seek. All the cars in the city were gone, and the city streets were completely empty. We all had conversations with each other, and could recall them, but it appeared we were physically at the other person's location, even though we were all actually miles away from each other. The guy ended up running down a highway that he said contained no cars, which is literally impossible, and said he sat on a doorstep in a town miles away from the city we were in, when a woman came to the door and recognized him from a picture. She invited him in and introduced herself as his mother's second cousin. He had no idea where she lived, who she was, and where he was. She showed him the picture of her and his mother, and his picture that was sent 2 years before, and allowed him to call home. Then, she drove him back to where we were. We honestly don't know what happened that night, except for 1, we all had the same hallucinations, 2, we all interacted with each other throughout the night, though we were actually apart, and 3, we all believe we visited some other place, dimension, whatever you want to call it. I'll tell you something though, be cautious. There are totally new rules to this, and it seems like it can be a dangerous place, this whole other dimension. And yeah, all of our watches had lost about an hour, varied. I honestly wouldn't fuck with this stuff, you know. Maybe 5,000 years ago, or when people respected this kind of thing, it would be a different story. But I can assure you, that time is long gone now. Imaginary friends may not be nice. A Datura trip report by Ryan, posted to irwid.org, November 21st, 2003. So here's my experience with Datura. It's definitely not a pleasant one, I must say. It's one in which I will turn you away from using this drug. It all started one day when my friend John moved back from Las Vegas with a trash bag full of this stuff. The fruit, or whatever you would call it, was the size of a baseball. We didn't really know what part of the plant would be the most effective in making the utterly disgusting tea, so we split open the fruit and seeds and boiled all of it. My mum even witnessed the whole process, calling us stupid. After 10 minutes, we poured the tea into a 42-ounce cup, which we split in half. We sat down on the couch with no idea what this tea was about to do to us. At 11:30 PM, 15 minutes after drinking the tea, we began to feel very drunk, and my guitar sounded quite unusual. John started laughing uncontrollably and kept insisting that he needed to take a piss. When I told him to take a piss, he just pissed on my bathroom floor. And then I realised I had got myself into something I wouldn't want anybody else to experience ever. After about 2 hours of watching John drink out of imaginary drinking fountains, picking peach pits off the ground, as well as gluing my car keys to the wall with my mum's nail glue that he'd found, I decided, at 4 AM, to wake my grandma up, crawling into her bed military style. I told her that we had drank some tea and that John is hallucinating and needed to take him home. So we drove 50 miles, and the whole time, John was just trying to jump out of the car. He'd removed the headrests from the seats and tried to throw them out the window. For some reason or another, I wasn't as messed up as John, but that was soon to change. When we arrived, I could not explain to my grandmother where he lived. We turned around and headed back to my grandmother's house. On the way, we dropped John off at a friend's house because my grandmother could not handle us both at the same time. So at 6 AM, this is about the time I could not distinguish my imaginary friends from real people at all. I began to talk to people that weren't there the entire following day. The fact that they would talk to me for 5 minutes and then disappear was not unusual for me. I sat on my bed for hours when I finally got up, asking my grandmother how long I'd exactly been sleeping for. She told me I'd been sitting on my bed staring at the wall for several hours now. So meanwhile, John had escaped. He went to the neighbour's house, walked in, turned the TV on, and began to dance. The cops arrived, asked him what his name was, and he said John. They proceeded to ask questions like, "Where do you live?" His response being, "Everywhere." By that time, my friend had begged the police to let him go and not press the issue. The police told my friend if they ever saw him in town again, he would be arrested for sure. Well, if your cup of tea is to black out for several hours, hang out with your imaginary friends for 2 days, as well as having your pupils dilated for 3 days, as well as being very painful, I still suggest never to drink or eat anything that has to do with this plant. Just remember, your imaginary friends may not always be nice. A Walk with the Dead. A Datura trip report by Sage. Posted to irwid.org, May 1st, 2002. I've been taking different forms of hallucinogens for years now, from acid to DMT, but never have I experienced a trip so unnerving as the Datura trip I'd recently been on. I've had acid melt things, or I've acquired eagle vision on DMT, but every trip since this one has been distortions of reality, and not true hallucinations of things or people that weren't really there. I heard that there was some Datura growing in a nearby park from a friend of mine that just ate some of the flowers. He told me he was still tripping, and he ate the flowers 3 days ago. He told me a little about his trip, and I knew I had to try this plant somehow. I figured it was more powerful for him because he isn't a regular tripper. His dose was 10 flower stalks, I think. So after eating 8 of these flowers, Bell shrugged off. It was very shortly thereafter that I began experiencing a body fry. It was much like a mushroom trip. The colours grew steadily brighter, and the tracer effect relative to acid settled in about 20 minutes. I wandered away from the friends I had dosed with and was walking by myself on a residential street. Kept trying to take a drag of my cigarette, but I realised I didn't even have a smoke in my fingers to begin with. I was sure I was smoking a long cigarette though. I looked everywhere behind me and found nothing. This happened many times throughout the night. I heard someone walking behind me at one point during the trip. When I turned round, I saw my friend Trey behind me. I talked with him for a while, but as I walked, he wouldn't even answer anything that I asked him. And then I turned around to find a totally empty street instead. The next person I had seen was my friend Ron. I can't really remember what we talked about, because the moment I realised he had been dead for 1.5 years, I did a double take. He then turned into a parking meter. I was so stunned, I'd forgotten the whole conversation. Another person I was asking directions from turned into a fence post. My friends tell me of some other crazy things I did which I don't quite recall, though they might be just messing with me. My friend Tree says that he was nowhere around me during my trip, and he is a person to trust. The next day, I ate 4 more flower stalks and went into a slightly less potent trip. The day after that, I smoked some really kind weed and started getting visuals again, but no visuals like the first day. I've taken many visual drugs and mind-altering substances in my time, but I honestly don't think I'll be tripping on this one ever again.